3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Bergflow's Pivot Ready Live. I'm Wesley Maria. I head up the service division for Bergflow, and Amy, who runs up our operations division. For those of you guys who haven't heard us talk before, we strongly encourage you guys to drop comments, feedback, questions in the chat. We love engaging from you. We do answer live questions as well. Secondly, if you want to share this, so we've spoken a little bit about company structure. What are some of the important things in your company to look for, to consider when you build structure? What is important considerations when building the profiles for those leadership positions? In the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about numbers of your business, the importance of numbers, right through from what are the KPIs that you track to, do you have a percentage profit that you declare? So do you pay yourself a salary? Do you take a profit? Everything to do with numbers. So Amy, what have you got prepared for us today?
Well, I think where we left off last week was we talked a lot about numbers at the company level, but obviously there has to be accountability for the numbers. And if how I'm trying to say it right. If more than one person is responsible, no one is responsible. So I want to dive into how we allocate responsibility, what that means. I've had a couple of questions with some people that fall below the ELT level this week. And I don't think that it's always clear when we say you're responsible for the number, what that means. So I want to dive into that a little bit today also, but let's just start with how you assign numbers to individuals or how those two things correlate.
All right. So your statement earlier is if no one owns, if it's not assigned to somebody, no one owns it. And it differs hugely in you're responsible for the number from a monitoring point of view. It might be a team effort that contributes to the outcome. And I've seen a lot of businesses say, well, we're all responsible for client retention, or we're all responsible for growth, or we're all responsible for a stupid thing like Facebook marketing. Oh, the entire team must go on there and make Facebook posts. I'm not a big fan of Facebook. The only reason why I am on Facebook is for business reasons. I don't socialize on there. I don't maintain relationships on there. So for me, it's very difficult just to go on there and make a Facebook post, say, hi, here's my show and tell. Look, I got a new kitten, or I bought new shoes. So numbers are one of those things that the number has to mean something. The example of Facebook, you can make 1,000 Facebook posts and it can be about kittens and shoes and stuff like that. So the number has to mean something. So when we look at numbers, we look at lead measures and lag measures. The lead measure is the success indicator. If I hit these numbers, it's going to give me this result. So let's use plain language, growth. If I send out 50 estimates a week, I'm going to do 10 jobs a week. Your target is set against the outcome, the lead measures. So and again, we have to decide how we're going to grow our business. Is it based on revenue, or is it based on capacity? A lot of businesses, they are not optimizing their capacity, but they've got these audacious goals. I'm $1 million business next year. I want to be 100 million. It's like, well, you first need to get disciplined around utilization of your current capacity. So billable hours, prime example. I've got 200 billable hours a week with all my technicians. If that's your capacity, you've got to say, okay, am I billing at the right rate? And we spoke about it earlier. We've had clients that had 3,000 SKUs, product numbers in a manufacturing business. They scaled down to 15, and they went from a sub $1 million business. 18 months later, they project to do over 5 million. Extremely profitable because they got very clear on the numbers. We can perfect by doing the same thing over and over and over, by trying to be everything to everybody. But it boils down to, if we're going to manufacture something, we'd much rather manufacture the things that we're good at. We'd much rather bill our labor rate at the right margin. And then I see a lot of businesses, well, I'll do a job that makes $500 profit, and I've got jobs who make $50 profit. And they fill the $50 profit jobs to keep their people busy. And then, a month from now, all they're doing is $50 jobs. Because they haven't distinguished between a lead measure and a lag measure. A lag measure tells you the activity. A lead measure tells you the outcome, how successful you are in reaching that objective.
Okay, so let's take a step back. We set company goals, but those company goals may or may not directly correlate to your individual goals for the year. So we're talking, in our language, key performance indicators, KPIs. That is what your goal is going to be as you, as an individual, in whatever role you're playing. That's what your goal is going to be for the year, for the quarter, for the month. You can break it down from the long term all the way into the short term. Then you are responsible for, like you said, the lead measures. The lead measures is basically how you break it down. So it's saying year-end goal, what activity do you have to do in the quarter, month, week, day in, day out to get to the year-end goal? So that's your lead measure. Then your lag measure is the accountability around that KPI. Here's what you said your daily activity has to be. Now you have to report on your daily activity. Did you reach it? Did you not reach it? Why not adjust, and all of those things. I think to that point, when you're talking services, operations, and growth, growth is probably the easiest thing to set KPIs around. Yeah. Growth is activity. You are measuring activity, right? You're measuring activity, you're measuring results. Everything in growth is numbers oriented. Servicing is mostly similar. It's probably a little bit less number oriented, but definitely still numbers oriented. How many clients are you servicing? Like you said, what's your efficiency rate? All of those things. Operations is very much not numbers oriented. When I set, and from my experience, I've heard this across the board, setting KPIs for an operations person is super difficult because it's not measurable all the time. You're not measuring activity. So one thing that I have heard, and I've kind of implemented it myself, is the KPIs for the company are the KPIs for operations. So if Wesley as a service division is not meeting his goals, and John as our growth division is not meeting his goals, and as a company we're not meeting our goals, then operations is not meeting their goals.
Yeah, and another way to look at it is the company goals are operational goals, and if you split those into lead measures and lag measures, lag measures is how do I get them to get up to speed. Lead measures is measured in operations through efficiency. How efficient are we? So, I run the service division. And again, any service-based company like ours, servicing is always human capital that you spend. I know that in my division, my human capital rate is 10, as an example. But in the company scale, and again, you can roll this back to divisional budgets. How much of the capital in the business is spent on my division or in my division, and then also what is the efficiency rate. So yes, you can't measure systems, oh, we built 17.3 systems this week, that that's not a measurable thing. But you can say, okay, we're working on this system and we've taken client operational onboarding from 10 days to 2 days, or we've improved our outstanding debtors book. So a lot of clients who does window washing or power washing or something like that, they've got an outstanding debtors book. We've built a system around reducing that. So again, there's, even though that's an operational goal, it directly affects, as you say, the company goal, because the operational objectives, the operational numbers, is that of the company, because operations balances service capacity with growth initiative. And you've got to make sure, operations got to make sure that, the money flows correctly, that both of these are correct. But both these divisions looks at operations, say, okay, you need to make us as efficient as possible. And again, I think there are certain numbers that you can put on an operations division, effectiveness, efficiency, improvement, even if it's just, hey, the company grew 1%, or our revenue grew 2.5%, or our year-on-year retention number is 7%, up from last year. They're still numbers. Again, operations is responsible for tracking the KPI. It'll sit on the servicing side to fulfill the lag measures. It's like, hey, I need to do the work so that you can issue a report to say, hey, the company is doing well. How we need to bolster up our capacity. So we've got 200 billable hours and we're doing $1 million worth of business. Next year, we want to do 2 million. So the easy equation that I see, we just need to go to 400 billable hours. It's like, no, you don't need to go to 400 billable hours, because you first have to quantify, are you billing at the highest effective rate? Because this is where companies start getting into unprofitable space when they grow, because they go from 200 billable hours to 400 billable hours, and now they're doing 400 billable hours a week of $50 profit jobs. But billable hours means the operation cost is going up. There's new vehicles, there's new equipment, there's new training, there's new licenses, there's new liability insurance. All these things increase when you go from 200 to 400, and they're still just billing out at $50. So for me, that's where, looking at the numbers of your business, it requires somebody that's astute with numbers. It doesn't mean that the operations business, this example, it's not your responsibility to fix, but it's your responsibility to think about, because my head starts hurting when I think about numbers in that detail. But somebody that's strong in operations can focus on it.
Well, I think that it's very important to know that it's not, if I can map it out, like, we have company level numbers. We have company level goals. We have company level numbers. We have divisional level goals. We have divisional level numbers. I have numbers, but also the people below me have numbers, whether it's my assistant, whether it's a technician in the field, it doesn't matter who it is. Those people have numbers. Everyone in your company should have numbers, and someone has to be responsible for the numbers in the reverse. So you take the numbers from the company level all the way down to the individual level, but the numbers have to be reported from the individual level all the way up to the company level. And I'm totally going to rob this story out of a book that I was reading, but they use the example of, there's one person in the company who opens accounts the quickest, and there's one person in the company who opens the most accounts. So to know those two numbers, they're not supervisors, they're not divisional leaders, they're not anything. It was just two individuals had numbers that they were reporting on. And to know those two numbers, the supervisor was able to go in and say, hey, what are you doing that's opening accounts quicker? And what are you doing that's opening more accounts? And how do we put those two things together.
Yeah.
So then to your point, you're creating efficiency, you're creating systems, you're starting to put the puzzle together based off of the numbers.
Yeah, and that's what, we've got business planning coming up on Thursday. It's so important when you start planning the success of next year. So for us, business planning clinic is everybody's got a 3-year goal. And if you ask them at any point, they're still working on their 3-year goal. So that 3-year goal is always a moving target. They don't say 3-year goal starts here to here and here's my plan. So you have the 3-year goal. What's my 1-year goal to get me to my 3-year goal? Mm-hmm. And when you look at the numbers, as you say, that's where it starts becoming tangible to say, this person opens more accounts and this person opens higher accounts. How do I complement those? One of the clients that I consult with is, they get callbacks. And I think I mentioned it last week on the call as well. Their callback rate is extremely high, but it's Murphy's Law. It's always on the ones that's furthest away. So even though they build at $500 profit for that job, factor in the callback, they're at $50 a job. Mm-hmm. So the only thing the numbers does is it tells you, hey, this is where I'm bleeding. So, we spoke about systems and processes many times on this call, is where do I need to focus my system and process development? And for me, it is first plug the holes. You can paint the damn wall whenever you want, but you first got to plug all the holes in the wall. Otherwise, it's not going to do. So you can perfect it over time or improve it over time, but you first got to stop those leaks in your business. And again,
but you don't know where those leaks are.
Yeah.
Unless you have the numbers. Otherwise, it's just a guessing game. Oh, I think this is the problem, or I think this is the problem, but you don't. If you're not measuring your numbers, you don't know where the problem really lies.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to, the P&L will tell you what happened last month. And then, we talk about reactionary or response. So reaction is always driven by emotion. It's always driven by agenda. And if you allow reaction to pass and you get to responsive state, as a service leader and as a coach, I deal with this a lot with my clients, as responses are repeatable, it's scalable, it's systematizable. You can build a system around a response. If I put my card in at the ATM, it's going to give me a response. I'm not surprised. Well, what's it going to do today? What reaction am I going to get from the ATM today? There's a response. There's an expected response. So if once there's an expected response, you can scale it. If you go to McDonald's, as you said, if I go through the drive-through, I expect this type of response. They must take my money, give me food, and I must be happy and fed afterwards. If I'm reacting to it, it's like, well, there's no process, there's no system, there's no numbers that you can track around reaction. So scaling a business, scaling a division, improving a process, all drills down to, am I responding to numbers or am I reacting? And if you're looking at the P&L from last month and you're like, oh my gosh, we're down 2%. And the inertia always goes to, well, everybody, let's get business. We got to keep the doors open through Christmas. And so it's very reactionary. And then businesses go through these peaks and troughs all the time because it's always reactionary based on last month's lag measures. When you look at the numbers of your business, as we're saying, you can adjust the response, because above average people adjust their activity. Below average people adjust the goal. So if this is the goal, that I'm not foregoing my goal for the year to grow my business by $1 million or get it to $1 million or whatever. The only variable is adjusting the activity, and you can respond. It's like an accelerator. You can respond to the growth need of your business, to the service need of your business, to the client retention need of your business. But if you're dealing with a reactionary action based on what the numbers told you what happened last month, it's always this knee jerk, and you find yourself in these peaks and troughs.
Okay, so let's put some tactical application behind that.
Mm-hmm.
In a small scale and round numbers. If we have the goal of we're servicing 100 jobs a month, if I wait until the 28th of the month and say, how many jobs did I service? And I only serviced 70, I have to then either decide if, am I going to, in 2 days, figure out how to get 30 jobs, which is very unlikely.
Yeah.
Or the reality is I'm going to say, okay, well, never mind. I just serviced 70 this month.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what you're saying is if it's our end goal is 100 jobs this month, week 1, you service 25, you're on track. Week 2, you service 20. Okay, you have 5 jobs to make up, meaning in week 3, you have 30 jobs to service.
Yeah.
And if you're not looking at it in those smaller increments, then by the time you look at it, you're so far behind, you can't make it up. And that's where you were talking about. You then lower your results to meet your activity versus increase your activity to stay on track with your goal.
Yeah, 100%. And beautifully put, is that's exactly what companies do. Is they start off with New Year's resolutions at the beginning of the month. Oh, we're going to do 100 jobs. And then, there's always a dumpster fire. There's a call out. And then, there's always reasons why you couldn't get to that. Oh, we've sent so many estimates, the clients didn't sign. And if you don't look at the numbers regularly and you only wait until the end of the month and say, okay, we're out of time. The same applies that when you carry that 5, like you said, from week 2 to week 3, when you're serious about growing your business, you're going to carry that 30 jobs from this month to next month. So you're averaging, 27 and a half jobs or whatever the number, you're going to average a different number next month. Mm-hmm. But, we talk about a thing called the 15th protocol. We spoke about it at our company business planning clinic. Is you've got to draw a line in the sand for yourself in the business, and even if it's a week. So if somebody's making growth calls, let's use real numbers. Hey, I need to make 100 phone calls this week. I need to send out 100 estimates this week. If by Thursday, your real end of day Thursday, you're like, oh, I needed 20. There's no physical way for you to catch up the other 80. Is you've got to bring that trigger earlier to say, okay, if by Wednesday, what is my percentage to goal? I'm 50% to goal, or I'm 30% to goal. That means, some of the stuff that I had planned for Thursday, I might have to forego. I might have to see if I can bump it a week. I might have to cancel a meeting that could have been an email. I might have to not go for, the kolaches and donuts at the office on a Friday morning. I'm responsible for hitting my numbers at the end of the week. Because you know what? Next week when I'm on track, if I'm on track today, I'm going to be on track for the week. If I'm on track on week, it's month. Month is quarter, quarter is year. But very quickly, you'll find yourself so late in the game that you cannot make it up. And that's why we hyper focus on numbers with our clients. There's nothing else in your business that gives you more data. It's the language of your business. And if you don't look at numbers, everything else is an intention. I hear this a lot from marketing. Oh, we want 57 million impressions on Facebook. I'm like, okay, how many deals do we get? No, it's brand awareness. I'm like, no, 57 million impressions means nothing to me. When my capacity is being used on my servicing team, that's how I measure success.
Yeah. Well, and I would venture to say, and you can correct me if you disagree, in a service-based business, probably for historically the last couple of years, but also moving forward into the future, knowing these numbers and checking in them often is even more important because of the unpredictability of everything. So, we don't know if you're doing, like you said, Christmas lights, we don't know what consumer spending is going to look like next year.
Yeah.
So we can do the best guess estimate based off of what it looked like last year, but what it looks like in 2020 might be drastically different than what it looked like in 2021. And because we've had such unpredictability in our market and our consumerism and everything all the way around, checking in on those numbers often and staying on top of those numbers, I would venture to guess is going to be super important in, especially next year, probably for the foreseeable future moving forward because of that variable as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to one of my clients last week, and I said, hey, you guys have this number. How did you get to this number? And they're like, no, well, we just took our numbers for the last 3 years and we forecast. And I said, okay, well, let's look at it each year. So what is your average annual growth in your business? Between 8 and 11%. I said, okay. So I see here 1 year you reported 41% growth. It's like, yeah, that was 2020. I said, okay. So how did you get to this number? No, I just amortized those and I got to 23.7%. And then I forecast my numbers. And I'm like, you forecast on an anomaly.
Yeah.
There's no way that you can repeat 41% growth. I don't know if the government's going to flood the market with money again. I don't know if people are going to, buying frenzy like they did or cash frenzy like they did. Interest rates are different. There's many variables that have changed. So realistically, if you hit a 10%, you're on track. And this is where I was saying earlier is where somebody, the operations person being the right hand of the CEO, I'm not looking for a company to say, hey, how do we go from 10 to 40? If you want to get to 40, you've got to take steps there. You got to say, okay, how do we go from 10 to 20?
Yeah.
And how do we maintain 20? And how do we go from 20 to 25 or 30? And there's other things that starts playing into effect. So market penetration, geographic location, how big are you? How saturated is the market? How many guys are leaving, the industry? What is your competitors doing? Are you priced competitively? Are you underpriced? So what you're doing and Johnny's, shop down the road is you guys are just having a price war to the bottom. Who can do it the cheapest? So your $50 becomes $40 becomes $30, and eventually you're just breaking even. So your revenue is up, but your profit's not up. Mm-hmm. So you have to look at your business through numbers, and it's not just revenues for vanity, profits for sanity. And you can be 10% year on year, but you're sitting on the back of a 7% inflation for this year. So 7% inflation, you're actually just up 3% because your cost of goods acquired, your acquisition cost of your raw material is up 7%. If you're that lucky, we know from the residential space, wood prices blew out at the beginning of the year. It wasn't 7%. It was 23, 35%. So, you have to be able to reforecast to say, am I realistic? And you can't save yourself into profitability. You can make yourself more profitable by being prudent or frugal with the money that you spend. But you have to plan to grow. It's not going, the economy is not going to, the tide, yes, when the tide comes in, all the ships rise, but we're in a retracting tide. So we've got to allow our businesses to operate in a bear market.
Yeah.
How we ran our business in a bull market is easy. I mean, you pick up the phone and you stick a pamphlet on someone's door and they do business with you. Now, I've heard clients that say, we have to have 30 conversations before somebody does business with us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to dive a little bit before we go down a rabbit hole here into how do you mentioned the business planning clinic that we host. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but how do you get from company level numbers to individual level numbers going all the way down? So in a planning meeting, as in everything else, the more people that are in a meeting, the less productive it's going to be. So you can't bring the entire company into a planning meeting. You have to bring what we would consider your ELT, your CEO, and your 3 key leaders. They come together, they set the company level goals. In that, I'm just going to use our terms for reference, and if you want to jump in and explain it at any point. We also set the strategies and the tactics that are going to get us to those goals. So we prioritize those strategies, we prioritize the tactics. I want to make it very clear that those strategies, depending on what your goal is, they're not broken down really nice and neat by division. So like I, as an operations person, am responsible for strategies that might be directly impacting or directly correlated to growth. But in order to break up the workload and hold accountability and do all the things, you can't have 20 strategies either. You have specific goals, you have minimal number of strategies. Each strategy has steps that are going to get you to it. Each strategy has a single individual that is responsible for it. So that's kind of how we get to the divisional goals or responsibilities. In essence, you also have goals within your division on top of the company goals. I have goals within my division on top of the company goals that we still have to keep executing. From the divisional level, one of the things that I did this year, which was really great, was I basically did a mini business planning clinic with my division. So I sat down with my team and I said, okay, here's the company strategies that I am responsible for. Therefore, as a division, we are responsible for. Here is a couple of additional divisional strategies that I want to be responsible for. And then we did the same thing. We broke that up as to who on the team is going to be responsible for each one of those strategies. Those strategies each have tactics saying, you know, maybe a tactic to the growth strategy is 100 calls a week. Who actually is responsible for executing the 100 calls a week? And so it's really the way you get to individual numbers is by starting at the company level. You have to know those numbers first. You have to just keep chunking it down until every person in the company, every person in the division knows what they are responsible for, and those numbers are going to directly relate to the company goals. Now, there might be other things that get accomplished over the next year. You know, you might build a great onboarding system. I might bring in a 401k plan, you know, whatever it is. Like, there might be other goals divisionally that get accomplished, but the day in, day out activity is directly leading to the company goal on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that, so the way that I train that, or I help clients think through that, is you have to have a goal for the next year. So yes, the ultimate goal for the company is to grow, but you need to have a goal for the next year. We can't do everything in one go. And you know, once revenue gets unlocked, so when you look at your profitability, building at the right, when you're pricing for profits, whatever you want to call it, you know, for clients who've developed beautiful tools that helps you establish your pricing for products, so you can adjust your pricing and see how quickly it affects your bottom line. When you start at the end, it's an outcome-based strategy. So if I want to grow my business by 1 million, that means I need to do this. That means I need to do this, and I have to do this. And to your point around getting the entire team, so I'm services in your operation, and the reason why some of those tactics are sitting on your desk is because as a company, we're relying on your skill set to manage that strategy. It doesn't mean that you're going to do all the work. It just means around system building, for argument's sake, you're much better at project managing that system. When you're assigning people to help across divisions, it's always strength-based approach. It's not who's willing to do it. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm willing to park cars, speak to directors or sweep the streets, whatever it is. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Am I good at everything? No. So having a strength-based approach that focuses on what each individual person is really good at, that's what completes the strategy. And I was coaching a client this morning. The key indicator here is whether at the end of the conversation, you can ask yourself a question. How am I going to know that it's done? And by when is it getting done? If you don't get to those two details, then you don't have a plan. You have an intention. You need to know the numbers. So if we're going to increase our profits, when we go from 10 to 12, that's an indication. The other side of that coin is by when. So even if you look at the numbers of your business and you strategize to grow yourself, more clients, expansion into multiple regions, whatever it is, it has to end with, it starts with the end goal. You work your way back, and each of these different tactical implementations along the way has to answer two questions. How are we going to know that this has been executed, and by when? And then you assign someone's name to those two tactics, to those two success indicators. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a good point too. Deadlines is a huge number in your company. No matter what division you lie in, no matter who you are, like deadlines is a number that has to be looked at because, for example, if I'm building a system and I need you to write me an email so that I can send it out so that the next step can take place. Everything's on hold until you get me that email. Well, if you're not holding accountability around a deadline, then all of a sudden my responsibility becomes dependent on when you feel like doing it. And if we all function in that world, it goes back to the same thing we've said multiple times. Like, if no one's accountable for it, everyone's accountable for it, no one's accountable for it. If we all just live in this willy-nilly world, no one's going to get anything done because everything's just waiting around till someone feels like doing it. And so if you have, and I say this loosely, but if you have no other numbers in your company, you have deadlines. Things have to get done by a certain time. And if that's where you can start your accountability, then that's an easy place to start. I need you to get me this by next week. I need you to get me this by the end of the month, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, and that's why, looking at the numbers, I can talk for hours, and I don't want to drag this out too long. We like looking at the numbers of businesses. We like speaking with business owners. So one of the things which is where we engage clients and potential clients and helping the community out there that we're trying to serve, which is service-based companies, is we offer free strategy sessions. So I want to invite you guys, if you want to talk a little bit more specific around your number. I know that some of you guys have asked questions on here. Some of you don't want to share your personal stuff. Reach out to us. Amy's going to put a banner up, and then you guys will see what are some of the contact information where you guys can reach us.
I'm going to put a phone number up in 1 second. I just have to find the phone number first.
All right. So you guys can reach us at that email address. Reach us at contact@bergflow.com. You're more than welcome to set up a strategy session. It's a complimentary strategy session. We'll spend an hour with you guys over Zoom talking about your business. Where are you? Where are you stuck? What's holding you back? What is it that you need to focus on in the near future?
How about this? You can also send a text to that number right there, and we will get you both.
Yeah, there we go. Or you can send a text to, I'm going to put my radio voice out, 940-283-5590. So yes, you guys can text us at 940-283-5590. We also have our business planning clinic coming up this week. You guys can check it out on our website. We've got many other companies. Some of our biggest clients are going to be there. Some of people like you guys are on the outside are interested. We invite everybody. If you want to set a plan to succeed for 2023, you need to have a plan to hold your team accountable to. Not only yourself, but your leadership can hold you accountable to that. So yeah, if you guys want to join us at our business planning clinic, it's online, 9 to 5 Central. You can click on the link Amy put on the chat. Anything else, Amy?
Just to clarify, the business planning clinic is this Thursday. So today's Tuesday, so we will cut off registration at the end of the day tomorrow. So it's not too late to sign up for it. Just go to thebergflow.com/BPC. So, but other than that, that's all I have.
Perfect. Thank you guys for joining. We look forward to speaking with you guys. We look forward to having strategy sessions with you guys, seeing where we can help you guys and what your business looks like. I don't know if we're going to have more of these for this year. I don't know if Amy's going to run it. I'm out of the office for the next 2 weeks. So maybe Amy and John, or Amy and Dirk, will be hosting these. But yeah, thank you guys for spending time with us. As always, we love hearing from you guys.